Okay, so I've seen a few tutorials on how to use Entity Framework Core 2.0, and they're long and detailed, and they're very good because it's important to know how to actually do all those details. But I think it's also useful to know how to do it really quickly. And the Entity Framework Core tooling can really help with that. In you can make a database from the entities in your project. Plus, you can also make entities from the tables in your database. So that's really the goal of this video. I plan to do it quickly, so there's not a lot of explanation. And the idea here is basically to just give you an idea of how this goes. And the tools I'm using here are all the latest tools at the time that I'm making this video. So Visual Studio 2007, ASP.NET Core 2.0, Entity Framework Core 2.0. SQL Server I'm using 2017, and Visual Studio 2017 for that matter. But it should work with 2008 and onwards. The idea here is you should be able to create your database tables from your entities by using the update database command. And then vice versa, you should be able to create your entities from your database tables by using the scaffold db context command. Plus, I also, just for the testing purposes, I also generate the web app views needed to edit, well, one of the tables. It just generates these views, so they're not very, beautiful. And I do that by adding a controller to the project. And then here are some references that I built this presentation on. And then here's a little reference on the instructions I'm using. Add migration generates a script from the entities so that you can build a database. When you say update database, that's when it executes that script to build the database. Scaffold db context, that's what makes the entities from the database. All right, so I'm going right from scratch here. ASP.NET Core web application. I'm going to do this twice, by the way. This is a web application with model view controller in it. You'll see that I'll make it nice and easy. All right, so let's create our entities. So I'm going to try and make this like a little blogging database. So put some properties in here, the fields basically. This is a list of the posts. We don't have that post, so it's going to stay underlined there. And that should do it for my blog. Oops. This is a link to the blog this post is in. And then here's some details of that blog. So that should do it for the post. Now, I have my entities, so I could try to add the migration for these. Let's just see what happens. I could tell you it's not going to work, but it's worth a try. And I have to give it a name, so the error is no DB context was found for in the assembly. So that makes sense. What you need is when you're following the model view controller pattern, you need a context for your entities. So let's do that. And first we need to put DB context. This is in Microsoft Entity Framework Core. And then we have to put in database sets for the two entities that we want included in this context. So and that's it, right? So now we have a DB context. Let's just give it another try. I can tell you it's not going to work, but no database provider has been configured for this DB context. In other words, we don't have a connection to a database. So what this is recommending is that we do an override on configuring. So let's do that. So we're telling it we want to use SQL Server, right? Now in here, we put a connection string. But what is our connection string? Well, I have a couple of servers over here. All right, to get our, let's do this. To get our connection string, I'm just going to look at the properties of this server. It's in here somewhere. Now, a few of these parameters in here I don't really need. But what I do need is my data source, which is my server. That's correct. I need my database in here. It's called initial catalog, but we don't want that. We don't want to create our tables in master. We want to create a new database. And then we do need integrated security equals true. And that should do it. Now let's see how that goes. There, it worked. To undo this action, use remove migration. Plus it opened up this file here with an odd name, and I can see that it's in this new migrations folder and put in two scripts. One of these scripts is for building the tables. And here it is. You can see it says create table, blogs, create table, posts. All right. So we're halfway there. Now we need to run that script by saying update data, update database. Done. Now we look at our server. I'm going to have to refresh. There's our new database. And here are the two tables. Plus there's this additional table for tracking what we do. Let's see what the fields are in here. Here are the fields we created. Blog ID, URL. Here's the table for the posts. Content, title. This is a foreign key to the blog. All right, so just what we want, but let's test it. Oh, we got one more thing to do before we run a test. We're going to add a controller. Add controller. This is going to build our views for the blog table. Blog. Okay, now, in addition to home and shared, it now has this new blogs folder. And it will list the blogs. We can create one. We can view the details and edit it and delete it. So let's give that a shot. Let's just close all these. So this page we see right here, and it has these links. This is based off of the home controller, but we want to go to the blog controller. So in order to do that, we have to actually enter the address. And we get this nice error page, which is saying that it's unable to resolve a service type that goes from blogging context and blog controller, blogs controller. Now, it's not clear from this error message what the problem is, but I know what the problem is. In our blogging context, following the model view controller pattern, you can't just modify your this blogging context right within the class. This connection string should come through a dependency injection. That's what we need here. So we're going to switch this connection string to a dependency injection. For that, we're going to create a constructor, which really doesn't do anything, except in here we have the DB context options, and then we're going to pass that through to the base class. All right, that's just how that's done. Let's build it just to make sure we did that right. All right. And then in the startup, we're going to create that service. Now that blogging context isn't here, so let's add a using statement for the models. There we go. That just got inserted up above here, right? There it is. So now we want to say we're going to use SQL Server. And that's not in here either, so we're going to have to add that. And that's in Microsoft Entity Framework Core. There you go. Now, we could just enter our connection string here, but really what we should be doing is using a configuration so that it's not hard-coded into our code. All right, so instead what I'm going to do here, we have a configuration right here, right? So let's just use that. Look at that, get connection string. There we go. That should do it. Now, where do we store that connection string? One of the places that configuration gets its values is from this app settings file, which is written in JSON. So let's put it in there. And now we got to get our connection string again. Look at that, it changed the single slash into 2. That's nice. All right. Actually, I could have just executed it. Oh, it opened it up in another window. And there you go, look at that. Details, edit, save, delete. All right, that works. Wait, let's just add one so you can actually see it in the database. New query. Blogs. There it is, there's that value. All right. So there we go, end to end. All right, now we're going to do it the opposite direction. I'm just going to leave that project open so that we can compare what we did before and start a new project. And I'm going to do the same thing here. All right, now I haven't done anything. All I've done is create this project, and we're just going to go right into creating entities from the database. So I just did a cut and paste of the instruction I'm going to do, and I'll tell you what it is. Scaffold DB context. This is the connection string. It's different than what I used before. It's the same database, but I just removed some of the parameters. We're going to connect to SQL Server for this. And the output directory is models. So that's this one right here. That's the one we were writing our entities into before in the other project. All right, let's see what happened. Well, it opened up a file, blogging context. And in models, I see post. So let's see, it's blogging context, posts, and blogs. One difference is that it put an S on our class name here. If I switch to the other project, you'll see it's very similar, except in the old one we used list, and in the new one it's a collection with a constructor to initialize the collection. What's the difference with post? It's very much the same. It's the same set of fields in a different order. Okay, now let's look at blogging context. You might remember that I created the two data sets for the two entities that we have, and then I switched from using this onConfiguring to a constructor with dependency injection. If I look at the new one, there's that onConfiguring thing again. And we know this isn't going to work, right? We tried it that way before, and that was the problem. So I'm just going to comment this out. And we do see our two data sets, plus there's this onModel creating. And what it does is it helps to enforce some of the referential integrity and making sure that when you create a post that the blog ID exists in the blog table. And that's fine. That's a good thing. I didn't do that. So let's create our constructor. And then in startup, we add the service. Microsoft Entity Framework Core, right? But we're not going to put our connection string in here. Instead, we're going to use that configuration. Get connection string, and a connection string will be named right. So that should do it. And let's go get our connection string. So I got a copy of it here. Two slashes. I love that. All right. One more thing we got to do. Create our constructor. I should see only one constructor in there. Yes. Add constructor. Same thing. MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. Just going to do it for blogs. Created our controller, and let's give it a shot. Oh, popped it up over there again. Yay, it worked. Look at that. We see our old record in the database. This time we'll put a bunch of X's in. Look at that. Excellent. Now I'll just show you that last slide again. There it is, which has the links. Hopefully I'll put those in the video as well. Links and the instructions I used. Thank you.